I talked to 5 calisthenics legends one-to-one, Viktor Kamenov, Kurganov, Elias, Andry Strong, and the barkage, and this is what I learned. So the whole point of this video is because when I do these big 1-hour interviews with these calisthenics legends, it's hard to come away with just 1 to 2 points that you actually implement into your workout. Sometimes there's so much information, it's hard to know where to even start. But don't worry, I've done the work for you and implemented them into my workout, and now let's go through the 5 things I learned from these 5 legends. Okay, first let's start off with Viktor Kamenov. Again, thanks Viktor for coming on the channel because we are a very small channel at the moment, but we're making waves, so hit that subscribe button for more interviews with calisthenics legends. Now, with Viktor Kamenov, we talked a lot about form and the basics. He's a really big advocate for the basics and working on form before moving on to more advanced things. And this is really similar to Andry Strong, who also works on his basics still, even at their elite level. So that's something they have in common, but let's stick with Viktor Kamenov for now. He also works on his basics and progressively overloads them, so makes them hard as they need to be, so he keeps working as hard as he needs to keep creating those adaptations to gain new strength and up those levels from what he has previously. So that's the main thing. So how did I implement this into my workout? Well, looking at my form a couple months ago, early in the year, I was working on the Maltese and trying to get planche presses and stuff like that, which I did get. I was getting really close to the Maltese. I had the full planche press, I had the full planche push-ups, getting better at all of those. However, when I looked at my form, I realized I could do a lot better. And I could have done one way of training, which was to really just keep working on my protraction because that was the main issue, while training and just carrying on. So carrying on with the full planche presses, but sometimes guys, you have to take a step back and let, you know, your ego kind of take a hit a little bit. It was really sad to kind of let go of my full planche presses for a couple months while I work on my protraction form and learn that new full planche form, because it was completely different to how I was doing before. The muscle activation is completely different, but now I know way more about the planche even than I did a couple months ago. And that's all because I took a step back and went all the way back down to advanced tuck planche and straddle planche for a couple months, a couple weeks even, and I saw huge amounts of progress, you know, just working on that for a couple weeks. So guys, that's the first tip, is sometimes working on form and working on your basics is gonna help you in the long run. Sometimes you need to take those 2 steps back to really take that step forward. So that's the first tip. And the next golden tip that I learned was from Kurganov. And man, was this conversation not one of the most insightful and mind-blowing conversations that I've had? I don't know. You guys need to watch that interview if you haven't already, because it will make some things click if you don't really understand a lot about planche programming and how things should work with how you progress. That really provided me an insight into how his mind works and how a lot of the other elite athletes work to learn the planche faster. So let's dive into what was the tip I learned from him, and that was exercise selection. Exercise selection is very important. It's one of the most important things, because if you're not doing the right exercise, you're not training specificity, which is one of the key strength principles for calisthenics and strength training in general. So what I learned was to only really focus on 3 to 5 really good exercises for you for learning whatever skill it is. So instead of having really long workouts, which I used to have, you can see some of my old workouts in other videos, they're still great workouts. However, you do need to manage the volume because I put a lot of exercises in. This is completely different this year, where I've only been focusing on max 5 exercises, and I pick the best ones for me. I try them out, I give them a little trial run, maybe when I'm doing a deload, and just try them out lightly to see if I feel the muscle activation and if they're good for me. So guys, that's the next tip, is the exercise selection. Don't be doing 10 different exercises. It's a bit too much variation. Keep it to the 5 to 3 main exercises and do them well. And some of the really good exercises that he provided were some box assisted planche leans. So you put your feet up on something and lean into the planche. And then also is the box assisted Maltese presses. He found that he injured his wrists and then found that those were great for learning the planche position for his core and the presses. And I found that that is actually a really underrated exercise that a lot of people aren't doing and a lot of people don't even know of. So that is the tip I learned from Kurganov. It was exercise selection, and those 2 exercises are really underrated but are great for increasing planche strength. Now, Andry Strong, what did I learn from this calisthenics legend? The man who's trying to break the planche world record at the moment. He's training to break it. He can hold the planche for maybe like 36 seconds right now. Who knows, it's probably more right now. But what I learned from him is basics and pushing to the max. There's two things he does well. He trains twice a day because he's a full-time athlete. He trains in the morning, basics, and he really pushes basics, like I said, like Viktor Kamenov. So there's something that, you know, these elite athletes know that we guys aren't doing. Sometimes we're neglecting our basics, and it's something I need to take into account too. Of course, we don't have the time to train twice a day, but it is something I want to start implementing into my workout. Now, the main thing I implemented into my workout was pushing to the max. He would do basics to him, basically are handstand push-ups now and planche presses, straddle planche presses. Those are his basics. His level is so high that those are basics for him now. So doing some kind of foundational exercise to just increase your base level of strength is great. For me, it's handstand push-ups. I can now rep those out quite well, so I'm just putting a weighted vest on, the Gore Nation weighted vest, and then I'm repping those out. So that's the main thing I learned from him, is pushing to the max with the basics, and then also using some bands to increase the hold time, but it's mainly the basics, adding some kind of exercise like that. It all doesn't have to be too specific to the planche. This one I do, the handstand push-up, is just for general shoulder strength. And the next calisthenics hack that I learned that elite athletes are doing was from Elias Page. And man, this guy's pushing and pulling strength is absolutely insane. Search him up on YouTube and Instagram, you guys will see what I mean. Our conversation was all about pulling, so all those high level skills like Victorian, sat, straight arm touch, we talked about all of that, even just touch front lever and front lever. So have a look at that conversation if you haven't already. But what I learned from him was the use of bands. Bands are OP. Bands are literally so OP. If you don't have resistance bands, what are you doing? Resistance bands are the main parts of my workout nowadays, and in 6 weeks, I can completely level up my planche game, my front lever game, just by using bands. Just by progressively going down the bands, going from high volume to high intensity over 6 weeks. I can really change how strong I am. And that was something that was really brought to my attention by Elias Page, knowing that this elite athlete that can do, you know, straight arm touch, Victorian, all those crazy skills, he was training the same way I did using bands, really just opened my eyes that, yeah, this is the right way I should be training. He does the same thing I do. He goes from high volume into high intensity. It's also what Valentin does. So this is what I really was made aware of, is that I was training the correct way, and to, you know, use bands even more if I needed to. And yeah, bands is the way I love to train. If you don't have resistance bands, guys, check out Gore Nation, the link down below. They have new bands, you know, they even have a lighter, thinner band that's going to be even more useful. So guys, check the link down below. The anniversary bands are out now. Again, use the code JACK10 for minus 10% off. But that's what I learned from Elias Page, and I take it with me in every workout, you know, that Elias Page strength. And last but certainly not least, we have the barkage. One of the top athletes I look up to most. I'm not really sure what athlete I look up to the most. I always just try and better myself, but man, it's hard not to just be madly impressed and respect the guy and what he does and how he trains. And from our conversation quite a while ago now, but even our more recent conversations, what I learned is attempts are important. As much as in my videos, I do say be careful about doing too many attempts, etc, and how it's just doing attempts isn't the best way to train. There are times where attempts are the best way to train. You know, there's nothing necessarily bad about attempts, and this is something that barkage really preaches. You know, sometimes the best way to really train a move is just to train the move. You know, even with no bands, just learning the movement with no bands, because that's really what you're trying to do. This is another form of specificity in a way, and this is something that I like to keep in mind. There is a time and a place where you need to be doing attempts if you really want to progress. And for some skills, I feel like doing attempts is better than using bands sometimes. You know, I learned the handstand push-up and 90-degree handstand push-up all with no bands. There's some skills that you just don't need to be using bands, and you know, you can be doing attempts of it and doing negatives the old school kind of way. So guys, that's what I learned from the barkage. Attempts, they're not something to be afraid of. They are something you need to keep and incorporate into your workout in a smart way, where you're not doing too much, but you're not doing too little, because At the end of the day, attempts, that's what's gonna get you to the next level. If you never attempt, you're never gonna move on. That's what I learned from these 5 calisthenics legends. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was insightful because those conversations, those interviews, they are long. So hopefully this distills kind of some good information that you guys can take away and implement into your workouts. Now, if you want to learn more about any of those concepts, then click this playlist because it has all of the calisthenics legend interviews in one playlist. You can click through to find the one you want and learn more about that concept and more, because there's even more topics I didn't get to talk about in this video. I just talked about the ones I implemented, but there's so much more to level up your planche game.